All right. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Platform Q&A here, hosted by PlatformQ Education. My name is Katie Clark. I'm our Director of College Partnerships here. I'm joined by Matt Rubinoff and Ryan Hargreaves, and we're just going to give everyone a couple more seconds to get logged in and get started. Right, I think we are ready to get started. So thank you once again for joining us today here at PlatformQ Education for our Platform Q&A. Today we are joined by Matt Rubinoff from Strive for College and Ryan Hargreaves from the University of Vermont, talking about striving for a level playing field, talking about different access populations and how we're doing that. The slide shows Gil Rogers, but he was sidelined by a power outage today, so instead you get me, our Director of College Partnerships here at PlatformQ Education. And Matt and Ryan, do you guys want to introduce yourselves?
Sure.
Yeah, sure. I'll go first. My name is Matt Rubinoff. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer at Strive for College, a national nonprofit organization, which I'm excited to tell you guys a little bit more about as we get into our presentation today.
All right. And I am Ryan Hargreaves, and I'm the Director of Admissions at the University of Vermont. So I've been here for a year, and prior to that, I spent about 17 and a half years working in various capacities, sometimes focused on working with access populations at the University of Virginia. So I've gone from UVA to UVM.
I like that. All right. Well, just a couple of other housekeeping items. We are going to do some Q&A at the end. So there is a chat box on the presentation. Feel free to submit your questions and we'll definitely get to those. I'm going to be talking about how we define access populations and some of the challenges facing higher education. And then Matt and Ryan are going to talk through how we reach some of those different audiences. So what we strive to do here when we host these platform Q&As is address the common challenges that we face in higher education. So today we want to be talking about socioeconomic and demographic shifts. And so if we take a look, first of all, how students are finding colleges and universities and how college search works. We've seen that in the past, 15 or 20 years ago, there was a limited number of providers where you could obtain names and ways to fill the top of your funnel. And what that meant was there were less and fewer challenges in the middle of the funnel than what we see today, and your results for enrollment were somewhat predictive. But of course, over time, search has evolved, the way that students are finding colleges and universities, the number of students going to post-secondary education has evolved. There's all these different ways at the top of the funnel to connect with students. Students are also applying to more colleges and universities than ever before, on average 7 to 9. And then as institutions, you're typically facing more and more challenges in the middle, such as summer melt, students starting but not completing the application, students not depositing or even double depositing. And so we're seeing a significant drop in yield. And what we're also hearing from admissions officers is basically you guys are having to do double the work for the same results as before. We're also seeing that undergraduate enrollment from traditional type populations continues to decline. So the past 6+ quarters have seen a net negative enrollment. So we're seeing a decline in enrollment of first-time and full-time students. So how do we answer these challenges? How do we rise to the challenge that you as admissions officers are continually faced with of growth, diversity, and meeting all the different goals set forth by your institutions? So today, we want to talk about access populations. So how do we define these? So access populations are more important than ever to reach, and more important than ever as we look at that declining of those first-time and full-time traditional populations. But access populations, which we define as students from low-income, first-generation students, underrepresented minorities, we know that these are mutually exclusive groups, but they have many things that overlap. And they're a growing population that is going to college. So what Matt and Ryan and I want to talk to you guys about today is how we reach those different populations and how we meet the needs and the challenges of reaching these populations. So Matt, I'll hand it over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Katie, for having me. Thanks to Gil, too, for organizing the webinar today. I hope your weather gets better, Gil, and you get power back soon. Yeah, thanks for setting the table for today's conversation. The data you presented about declining enrollment reminded me of an NPR Morning Edition report from a few months ago. I think it was in May. They interviewed a research manager from the National Student Clearinghouse, and he cited two main reasons for the steady decline we're seeing in undergraduate enrollment. One being that adult learners are being lured into the job market as the economy is improving. But second, and I think the more relevant point for this audience, is that the number of high school graduates is actually staying largely flat and then is going to decline because of the lower birth rates we're seeing today. So the report also acknowledged that, we've been here before in the 70s and 80s. We faced a similar enrollment crisis. And at that time, it was women who came to the rescue to enroll in college. And today, female students make up more than half of all college enrollment. So the question now becomes, who is that next group that we should be targeting to recruit onto our college campuses? And to your point, Katie, and the researcher from the clearinghouse concurred that it's really likely the students of color and first-generation college students that are going to make up a greater share of new college enrollment into the future. So if our goal is to serve more students of color and first-generation college students on our campus, we certainly have our work cut out for us to ensure that these students can access our institutions and be successful once they arrive. The stats on your screen, I'm sure most of you are already familiar with, but every year, about 500,000 academically qualified lower income students who should go to college fail to do so. One of the big reasons for that is the large student to counselor ratios we see in the high schools that are serving the majority low income and minority populations. The point being that too many qualified students continue to miss out on college simply because of a lack of access to adequate college guidance and information. And in the high schools, where these students are, and because of those extraordinary student counselor ratios, we see that counselors are spending most of their time lifting up the highest achieving students or really trying to keep afloat the lower achieving students. And what that leaves is the majority, what I kind of like to call the wide middle of students who are going to graduate high school without maybe much extra support. But pursuing college is a harder task to really tackle alone. And so, that's where my organization, Strive for College, comes in and sees an opportunity. I'd like to think that there's an opportunity there for colleges as well, which we'll come back to in a moment. But just to kind of capture a little bit of background and history on Strive for College for you, we started in 2017. Our founder and CEO, Michael Carter, began this program from his dorm room at Wash U in St. Louis. At the time, it was more an in-person mentoring model, taking college students, working with local high school students, and helping them with the college admissions process. And from there, it expanded to 20 or so different campuses. A few years later, with an investment from the Albertsons Foundation, Strive began piloting virtual mentoring in the state of Idaho in 2012. And the seed was planted for a technology platform that could scale to really serve students virtually across the country in helping them navigate the college admissions process. 2 years ago, as that the U-Strive online mentoring program really began to take form, we had two major announcements. One was a merger with the I'm First program that partners with colleges and universities in support of first-generation college students. And we also began a national partnership with the Common application so that students who are looking for additional assistance with their applications could find it through Strive for College and a mentor that they would be matched with. We've seen the past two admission cycles now, over 200,000 students from the Common App demonstrate interest in our program and request information and access to our help. So in short, Strive for College exists to ensure that every qualified student who wants to attend college has that opportunity to do so. In our terms, we call these students strivers. And while we're building this national movement to support better outcomes for strivers, we also partner with colleges and universities to help you in an effort to better recruit and retain striver populations through three pillars of effective professional development, collaborative learning, and marketing opportunities. And it's so with that context that, I guess my job on today's panel is to kind of give some higher level perspective on how institutions can adapt to the changing higher education landscape and better reach and engage and support these special populations. So I have really kind of two main thoughts that I want to share with you. The first is that colleges really need to be more intentional with your marketing to students of color and first-generation college students. It's not a novel concept, but I think it's an important point to really drive home as we see the landscape shifting. So asking yourself questions about, do you have a dedicated fly-in program or special visit program for these students? Do you offer a summer bridge program or first-year experience to help entice these students to your campus and help them in that transition? Do you have mentoring programs, a first-gen network on your campus? And more importantly, if you have some of these programs, how are you featuring these programs on your website? Are they prominently displayed, easy to find information about these programs and opportunities for prospective students? Are you talking about these things in your admissions info sessions and campus tours? In a somewhat crowded marketplace, Strive for College, we publish a college guidebook called the I'm First Guide to College, and the college search tool within the U-Strive online mentoring platform offer a unique college search experience because we are trying to help students put a more "what's in it for me" lens on their college search and coach students to think more critically about the important campus programs and student support services and financial aid opportunities they offer. So those are those become the foundation of the college profile on our website and in our guidebook. So the point being that, as students of color and first generation college students grow to make up a greater share of the new college enrollment, whether it's through programs like ours or on your own and your own websites and info sessions and such, it's imperative that we, that we're changing the conventional ways that we talk about your institution and market to prospective students. How you talk about your institution and what you offer in your info sessions and in tours, and really be more intentional about communicating the unique opportunities, the experiences your institution offers to students of color and first generation college students. The second point I want to make is really to emphasize collaborative learning and professional development. The research shows, and it's pretty, common sense, I guess, that first generation college students and students of colors, often have a unique need set and interest when they think about what colleges are right for them, and certainly what it takes to support them once they get on campus. And I think most colleges today are acknowledging this and already have some strategies in place. But I guess it's important to ask yourself: are you doing enough? Are you evaluating what you are doing is working? Are you constantly iterating and innovating on that work? I think the colleges that are going to thrive in our changing landscape are going to be those that really are able to stay on top of best practices and innovative approaches to recruiting and retaining students. And so that means looking beyond your own gates to learn from and to share with peers. Maybe you think your fly-in program rocks, but have you taken the time to evaluate how other institutions are running these programs and where you can bring new ideas from and new life to your efforts? Or maybe you're dealing with some new challenges. You're seeing increasing summer melt, and you need to kind of survey some peer institutions to see how they have successfully addressed these issues. For Strive's community of college partners, we manage a listserv to facilitate this sharing and discussion, and we also host best practice webinars throughout the year to give institutions who we've identified as really excelling in their work or doing something innovative the platform and the audience to share what they're doing with other institutions. So there's obviously many different ways in addition to and beyond partnering with Strive that you can commit to your collaborative learning and professional development. Though if you're a school who doesn't already partner with Strive, would love to have you join us. But attending professional conferences, visiting other campuses, even your closest competitors or the college down the road, calling on your friends at other institutions, or even cold calling colleagues who you don't know, but who you've come to admire because you know about the great work that they're doing. The bottom line and the message I really want to kind of leave you with is that as we are seeing the higher ed landscape shift, and students of color and first generation college students are becoming an even larger share of new college enrollment, strengthening your institution's capacity to really effectively recruit and retain these students will be imperative to your success, and collaborative learning and professional development are going to be a cornerstone of increasing that capacity. So that's what I have for you. I look forward to answering any questions you guys have. Please make sure to share those in the questions widget. But before we get there, I want to turn it over to my colleague, Ryan, who's going to give you some more perspective, more practical and tangible thoughts, I guess, from an institutional perspective on how colleges and universities can adapt your strategies in the face of the changing landscape in front of us. So, Ryan, take it away.
All right. All right. So, Matt, thank you for providing that excellent overview. And I believe that much of what you've mentioned relates directly to what we are attempting to do here at University of Vermont. And for those of you that may not be familiar with University of Vermont, so we are, of course, in Burlington, Vermont. We're a population of approximately 10,500 undergraduate students. We're undergraduate focused. We are research focused as well, and offer about 100 undergraduate majors and a pretty robust campus life outside of the academic structure in place for students for their intellectual growth here. So one of the things that Matt mentioned that I think is really critical to what we're attempting to do here at the University of Vermont, he mentioned intentionality in marketing, and our focus has shifted. And I'm going to talk specifically about some of the very specific initiatives that we have in place. But from a 30,000 foot perspective, we are shifting from an outbound marketing strategy to an inbound marketing strategy, and really thinking about providing content and providing experiences that are going to be really valuable for the prospective students whom we encounter in our recruitment, who we encounter at our on-campus recruiting programs, and in cyberspace as we text them and email them and communicate with them otherwise. So, thinking about that inbound marketing concept, we've kind of taken a step toward a philanthropic model, so that, we want students who are in these access populations to be empowered to put their best feet forward in the admission process and find their way to the campus. And hopefully, many of them will find University of Vermont appealing. And we're definitely confident that a student who, comes here and visits will, if nothing else, be more enticed by what our institution has to offer and the culture here and the environment. But more importantly, we want them to end up at the right place, because it does us no good to reach a critical mass of students of color or first generation students if they've been sold on something that's not a good fit in terms of their academic life or their social life or their cultural life. So I very much believe in a rising tide lifts all the boats philosophy that is attributed to JFK. And so with that, we have found ways to partner with other institutions and through other entities. We are a member, one of 150 members of the Coalition for Access, Affordability, and Success, or the Coalition for College is the more shortened name at this point. And so this really is a paradigm shift for undergraduate or prospective undergraduate students with respect to how they apply to college and what's important. And, us really thinking about what is merit. And, there is a great, there are plenty of studies out there that will correlate socioeconomic status to to standardized testing. And so with that in mind, we're very aware of perhaps the flaw when trying to build a socioeconomically diverse class. So the Coalition platform is one, if you're not familiar with it, has a locker feature. And it, one, allows for students to engage early on in their high school careers. If they so desire, they can start an application, they can put stuff in their locker, and the things that they put in their virtual locker can be research papers, or, if they've done, science, or they have done, perhaps they're a great writer or a great artist, they can start to store things in that locker that they can later share with the colleges and universities to which they are applying. And also, too, the Coalition is an example of a platform whereby, students who perhaps would have had the barrier of, not just taking the standardized test, the SAT, but perhaps, the hurdle of submitting it to a specific college, the coalition has done some pretty neat things to eliminate those barriers. So just kind of really considering the taxonomy of and the progression of our process from prospective student to matriculation and beyond. I do want to talk about, what we do for students with respect to pre-college prep and outreach, and really being intentional about, programming and making sure that the programming that we provide is going to appeal to the socioeconomic and cultural and, otherwise diversity of students who are coming to our campuses. But there are two programs that are listed here. The Junior Jump Off and the Three for All programs are opportunities for high achieving students who are in Vermont and outside of Vermont to experience our campus, to get a tour, to go into a dining facility and check out the food. And also, there are faculty-led academic programs that take place as part of those programs. So really that's a tailored event that we have for the benefit of our students. And then Matt also mentioned, fly-in visits, for, many students, the idea of traveling from Washington, D.C. or, Chicago or, in Atlanta to come discover a place like Vermont that might be a great fit, but perhaps there are socioeconomic hurdles that exist. We do have fly-ins for those students, a Discovering UVM program that we offer to prospective students, non-admitted, just to come kind of have a first glance at what the University of Vermont has to offer, and then joining the circle, a little bit more tailored program, once students are admitted, to kind of start digging into some of those layers so that they can further ascertain fit. And, then, thinking about, what happens for students, once they are admitted. Matt also mentioned a summer enrichment program. We do have a summer bridge and robust orientation program. And those students will work, with our department or the Division of Student Affairs. They'll also work with the Mosaic Center for Students of Color if, they are so inclined to accept the resources that office will offer. So we have an amazing staff there who will, work with students as they go through their sort of academic, cultural, and social development process. And it's just another layer of support and advising that they will receive, as well as peer mentoring, pairing up our first-year students with outstanding upperclassmen who can be empathetic, identify with them on what they're going through in all the aforementioned areas, and just provide another layer of support. I do, think, and there's actually a great white paper that was done at the University of Virginia about cluster mentoring and how cluster mentoring, so, if you think about the cluster of people who work with students from the time they matriculate through graduation, faculty, other administrators, peers, you can provide a cluster of mentors to work with the student throughout their undergraduate years, then you can significantly increase the likelihood of graduation and retention of those students. So we have an outstanding peer mentoring model. And we're definitely committed to providing aid to our students. Vermont is a rural state, and just to give you a data point, about 40% of our Vermonters come here, tuition free, but that extends to a robust financial aid program for students across the board. And we have an amazing Catamount commitment program whereby the students who are lower income will be paired with a faculty or staff mentor to help them adjust, students coming in who are, first gen, who are, perhaps lower income, some of the issues with transition that may not be a reality for a student who's from a higher SES area. We want to be conscious of the fact that these students may not always naturally have the confidence to approach an environment that is a reality on college campuses. And so this is another layer of support. I talked about the coalition, been working with the coalition, working as a partner with Strive for College. We are also always, and Matt mentioned this earlier, thinking about ways to consider our process, evaluate our process, and be innovative and think outside the box and not rely on the things that we've always done, the status quo, particularly considering the changing landscape. And so we've thought about, a lot of strategic partnerships, and, we're currently working with either individual schools or clusters of schools or school districts in places like Chicago, places like New York City, Philadelphia. And I'm very proud to, announce, just going back to the philanthropic inbound marketing model, we were recently funded to take on a cohort of students in the DC public schools, and we provide them a formalized layer of college counseling. Won't cost them a thing, but they'll be working with some of our admission colleagues and financial aid colleagues at some of our partner schools, but also working with some people who are elite, very experienced college counselors. And we're going to provide them with some of the tools and the support throughout the process, as they go from their junior year, basically on up to the first day of college. And this is not something that is, University of Vermont focused, but something that is, honestly just a function of we as University of Vermont with our public mission. We want to be out there. We want to be out there helping students, and hopefully, many of them will land here at Vermont. We think we offer an amazing product for our undergraduate students, but ultimately doing the right thing and making sure they land at the right place. So I'm gonna turn it back over and pass the mic back, but just wanted to give you a little bit of perspective on where we are and what we offer here at UVM.
All right, perfect. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Ryan. Really enjoyed you sharing those insights. Remember that you can submit questions in the box at the bottom of your screen, and we're going to turn it over for some Q&A. We have a couple of questions already. The first one is, how do you get buy-in from senior leadership to provide resources to support access populations? So Ryan, do you want to take a stab at that one?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a great question. And, I believe one of the things that has allowed us to be successful here at University of Vermont is just having, constant conversations with our faculty, with our staff and administrator partners, and just providing, some awareness. And sometimes, it's just a function of, being able to speak the language. And so, thinking about, in addition to providing some anecdotes, but also providing data to our various departments, our various, colleges within the university, and, whenever possible, including members of the administration in our work. So at University of Vermont, one of the things that we have done is created a strategic initiatives enrollment committee. And so we have representation from all undergraduate colleges here. And so as we make decisions, as we have updates, we include them in the conversation. So there are folks who are natural ambassadors of our work just because we literally included them in the conversation. And so they have a better awareness about what we do from our recruitment, our evaluation process, and in addition, just kind of considering that in the context of, institutional priorities. And we've been able to forge some great relationships here. I have in my year here. And, I think that's kind of the way that I have gone about it.
Perfect. Thank you. And then a question for Matt. Generally, when is the best time to host a fly-in program?
Yeah, we see them obviously happening at different times in the fall. I want to point out too that fly-in programs are expensive programs. They're not realistic for every institution. So I don't want to get too kind of caught up in that terminology. We see different institutions have effective visit programs that are busing students in from nearby cities, or for schools that really have more local pools. Just open house and visit programs for nearby students. But the point being that these are tailored programs for access populations, and that the content of those programs speaks to what the experience is like on that campus for first-generation students and students of color, and is intentional about bringing people in to those programs who run the mentoring program or the first year experience program, and are those who are students and staff and faculty on the front lines of supporting those students on your campuses. So we see them pretty prevalent in the fall, different times, September, October, maybe even in November. But I'd also push you guys to think about how visit programs can be used for yield in the spring. And I think maybe that's even more effective use of resources, especially when considering access populations, that to be able to demonstrate to an admitted low-income student or student of color that we want you to come to campus if you haven't already visited, to show you what we have to offer, is empowering, and could be a big difference for a lot of students who might apply to your school because they have dreams of going there, even if they don't know if it's really realistic that they'll get in or be able to afford it, or they'll have their family's support to kind of go away for college. But to be able to have that opportunity to visit at no cost to them after they've been admitted could really, make the difference between them choosing to attend your institution or staying closer to home and attending the local state school or two-year college, for example. So think about fly-in and visit programs, not only in the fall for prospective students, but in the spring too, for yield.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And as we like to say on the other side of the desk, always be recruiting. So I think this is a question probably best for Ryan. How do you all market your student support services other than email or special mailings? As a second part of that, do you have a link to your services or resources on your admissions site?
Yes, we definitely do have links to those programs on our admissions website. And also too, the other thing that, we do is we actually have a person. And so if, the institutional partners that are on the webcast here, we actually have a person in our office whose job is to connect our diversity and recruitment programming with our communications team. So, and one of the things that we did, and this is just from a strategic practice, a best practice perhaps, is, in a lot of organizations, the diversity team and the, recruitment, teams within enrollment are two separate entities, and we made them one because we wanted all of our folks who are going out and serving as ambassadors of the institution to feel comfortable, to feel confident. And so when they go out to, college fairs, one of the things that we do and have moved to, this year is to do outreach, not just to the high schools that we visit, but also to CBOs, to, have them understand what we do in admissions, but also to understand some of the resources. And then, whenever possible, we have folks who will, either, sit on panels, or, I personally will, write sort of more tailored, letters that will perhaps be more appropriate for folks who are looking to learn more about those resources that are available. But yes, the short answer to your question is we do have those resources on our website, and want to make sure that all of our staff are readily available to communicate about those resources through training, and that's an ongoing thing, and I think a definite strategic way for us to ensure that we are able to properly communicate with access populations.
Yeah, I'll just piggyback on that, Ryan, and just kind of really drive home the point that for access populations, a college's website is often their first touch point to getting to know an institution, and information that's relevant to them about those important campus programs and student support services and specific scholarships or financial aid information is all too often buried on a college's website, if it's even there at all. And so, a very practical and low-hanging kind of step that institutions can make is to make sure that content and that information, comes to the surface and is part of not only your college's website, in general, but is part of your admissions website, so that information is available to prospective students, as well as current students, and easily navigable, and digestible too. We find that the lingo and the language that many in the admissions field, are comfortable with or take for granted kind of is confusing or unfamiliar, especially to access populations. So looking at your website in terms of how you're communicating and explaining the admissions process and the terminology that you're using, is also an important exercise. We've actually been piloting some new technical assistance services for our college partners. And one of those areas is evaluating institutional websites in terms of how first-gen friendly they are. And we've designed actually this really cool rubric tool that allows us to kind of give, feedback and comments on what we see as good or not so good about a college's website, as far as it is serving, a first gen or access, audience, and point them to some other institutions' websites that are kind of exemplars that we've identified as really, doing a good job in these different areas of communicating to this prospective student audience. So appreciate that question, and hopefully that gives you guys some food for thought.
Yeah, and actually, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead, Ryan.
No, I was also gonna jump in, and I think Matt makes a very valid point. And there's great research out there about how best to communicate with low-income or first-generation students, and I think it's very important that we make sure that the practices that we use, and I think in particular, when we were talking about Summer Melt earlier, to be able to, it's 2018, a lot of the students are texting and they're on, social media. And just think about, your population and whether or not incorporating, not all texting, obviously some things need to be communicated, via email or otherwise, but think about incorporating those contemporary communications practices as to, best relate to the students to whom you are, or for whom you are trying to provide support.
Yep, you took the words right out of my mouth, and that's what we talk about a lot here is keeping your students front of mind and your audience that you're trying to communicate with, thinking about how they're perceiving the information you're putting out there and how they're communicating with you, especially given the digital landscape that we all work with today. Definitely finding ways to communicate with students on no matter what their platform or their location of how they're reaching you, and keeping in mind that a student who is first generation might be communicated to differently or perceive messages differently than students who are, the fifth generation in their family to go to college. So I think we have one more question, and then I have a couple of other things to go through to wrap up. Shaniqua asked, do you have examples of those institutions who are doing a great job highlighting their support services? I love best practices. So Matt, do you have a couple that you want to highlight or go through?
Yeah, I mentioned that evaluation rubric that we've designed, and there's different institutions that we've identified as doing well in different ways with their. Oh well, I'm sorry. I think the question is not necessarily about the website, but highlighting student support services in general. Yeah, maybe it's something we can talk more about offline, Shaniqua. It's a big question, and so I'd feel bad kind of just cherry picking one or two schools over others, not really sure exactly what you're looking for, but the point being that we kind of have our fingers on the pulse of what's working and where there are institutions that are doing good work, and part of what we enjoy doing with and for our college partners is helping you connect with and learn from peer institutions.
Yeah, and at the end of the presentation, we'll have Matt and Ryan's contact information, so we can definitely get you guys connected so you can follow up on that and have a deeper dive into that conversation. That's all the questions that we have at this point in time, so I'm going to hop into some of our recommendations as well for communicating with and reaching these access audiences, access populations. So keep in mind, too, some background that I don't remember if I gave at the beginning of the presentation, is that PlatformQ Education is the leading provider of digital services to support student engagement. So when we're thinking about all of the ways that you're engaging these access populations, I think Ryan and Matt mentioned some really great options, such as fly-ins, peer programs, offering scholarships, but recognizing, again, the audience that we're looking to communicate with, and that the way that we engage with students has evolved. One of the ways that we recommend is through the Conduit platform, which is how we are broadcasting this webcast today. It's also being live streamed across our Facebook Live and Twitter. So going back again to the importance of reaching students where they are and on the devices and platforms that they're using. We also recognize, and all of this data is from the Ruffalo Noel Levitt's e-expectations report that was released earlier this year, but we recognize that 7 in 10 students are watching videos from colleges and universities. And they're also telling us that your .edu branded content, content on your website, on your flyers, in your emails, speaking with your peers is their most trusted source for college information, which makes sense, right? If you put it out as an institution, it's likely the most accurate. They're also telling us that current students and counselors are rated among their most influential connections. So if we can bridge those gaps and reduce any barriers to access or friction in bringing all these pieces together to reach students on the platforms and devices they're using, giving them that easy and immediate access. So we do work with over 200 different college partners and have over 50 years of enrollment and ed tech experience in providing you with ways to engage students through strategic engagement consulting, university branded engagement platform on the Conduit platform, live chats, webcasts, and other ways, if students are unable to make a fly-in or those different events that you're hosting in person, making sure that you don't lose that connection with them. So we talk about some other resources out there, ways that you can kind of maybe piecemeal some of these things together from a chat from one provider, or maybe using something like a GoToWebinar or a Zoom. We want to bring all of that into one student engagement resource for you that's going to be a fully integrated solution for you to use at every point in the recruitment cycle. So things like maybe hosting an online info session or an application workshop, tying that in with financial aid sessions. Of course, very important to some of those access populations is how do I get in? What are my chances of getting in? And then once I'm in, how do I pay for it? How do I make college a reality? So leveraging digital and online tools in combination with those in-person resources to really open the doors for these access populations. I just want to share some of the partners that we work with and some of the ways that they are leveraging the Conduit platform to host webcasts to engage with these different access populations. So the University of North Texas this summer had a great webcast specifically to reach DACA students, obviously very important topic and an important population in the climate that we're currently facing. So they had this specifically for that population. Students from all over the US were invited to attend, and it was great to engage with students who are attending through their computer, their tablet, their mobile device, and then they could record that and replay it and share it as a resource for those students. Same thing for Boston University. They had a webcast, or they're having a webcast in November specifically for underrepresented minority students and the support services that they provide. So if students are not able to make it, or we also know that students aren't making phone calls or answering the phone, they can be invited into this space where they can engage with you, watch your presentation, participate in a live chat, and get access to all of that information that's important for these students. And then some of the ways that we just continue to support you, some of the things that Matt and Ryan talked about, it's important to have an engagement strategy. So that's where our expertise comes in as well, to be able to provide you with strategies and effective best practices for running an effective online engagement program. This is just some of the support that we'll provide to you. We run online events every single day. We run over 25,000. So we want to be an extension of your team to help these run really well for you. And then some of the things that we want to talk about as far as optimization strategies, some additional tools that the Conduit platform provides to you that would be a great addition to those fly-in programs, those peer programs, your scholarships, everything else that Matt and Ryan alluded to. We want to provide you with Campus Connect, which is a chat widget that can be placed on any page on your website. It is mobile optimized as well. So as students are coming, as Matt mentioned, your website is often the first place that that underrepresented or access populations will go. So, but we also know they're not going to pick up the phone and call you with questions. So we want to provide them with a very easy to access tool right on the side of your webpage that's going to allow them to interact directly with you and your counselors, get their questions answered, and make sure that they are able to access all of that information and that they need to find. We're also going to work with you to have what we call a Q board, which is a question and answer board where in preparation for the online events that you're hosting, students can come in and submit questions as well as vote on questions that other students have submitted. So I think this is especially useful if you're leveraging your current resources, such as current students on campus sharing their experience. They often don't speak to prospective students on a day-to-day basis like we do. So this helps to provide insight into what those access populations want to know, as well as help your students prepare to share their experience as underrepresented students or lower SES students on your campus. And then one more, you guys may have noticed this today when we sent out the link for you to enter the event. That's what we call a Q token, which is a customized login for each of your audience members that allows you to click on and drop directly into the online events that you're hosting. So the beauty of this is it removes any friction, any barriers to entry, and allows students to bypass any sort of a registration process and drop directly into your events. So we see attendance to events really soar when using the Q token. So I went on for a little while. I want to be cognizant of time. We have about 5 or 6 minutes left to take some additional questions. Would love to hear anything about either the Conduit platform or any additional questions for Matt and Ryan. While we're waiting on that, I do have a question. This could go to either one of you. If you could, so we talked about fly-ins, scholarships, webcasts, different peer programs, different ways to reach these access populations. If you could only do one, what program would you guys recommend?
I'll start. I think that's definitely a tough question because, really a successful approach is going to be, in my opinion, an integrated approach, thinking about your publications, thinking about, just access to campus. If, in lieu of and I'll say in lieu of the non-financially or expensive, initiatives, one of the things that I've found that's been particularly effective is if you want your students to engage, if you want them to even seriously consider coming to your campus, perhaps with the support of a fly-in or other resources or otherwise, I think it's important that you present platforms so that those students kind of see themselves on campus. And for me, one of the things that we've moved to is, and you mentioned this during your talk, but we've actually moved to video chats with some of our faculty. They're about 10 minutes long, and we use the online, we've been using a Google technology, but basically we'll host interviews with some of our most diverse faculty, Luis Vivanco and Rashida Weaver, and basically just by showing them examples of people who perhaps have cultural similarities, with them, that is a way to engage and entice them. So you don't have to say, like, this is a good fit for you. They can just sort of see that through the voices of some people on campus who they can identify with. So I would say that that's an effective contemporary strategy.
Awesome. I agree. Matt, do you have any?
What were my choices again?
Or anything out of all the different outreach programs that we talked about today. Is there one in particular, say you have limited resources, limited time, is there one that you feel you would recommend over others?
Yeah, I know we're talking a lot about kind of the digital landscape, and that's the business that we're both in. But something is kind of pulling me towards the power of actually a student stepping foot on a college campus, especially when we talk about access populations. So, if I had to choose, I think, prioritizing opportunities, and certainly the digital strategy is a way to reach these students to kind of get them to know about your college and the opportunity to come to your campus. But ways that students in your pipeline can visit campus, participate in a program to learn about the resources you have, and if that's not possible or affordable to do, physically, there are great ways to do that virtually as well.
Yeah, and if you don't mind, I'm sorry, Matt, I was gonna follow up and say that definitely the visit is by far the most important opportunity for students, but definitely want to make sure they get there. And sort of in lieu of that, I think it's also a good strategy or best practice to figure out ways to use some of your local alumni who can identify with the backgrounds of the students in the geo markets that you're trying to recruit. I've helped start a program at my previous institution whereby we had alumni in 11 key cities, and they would identify folks for whom they thought the institution would be a great fit. And we're doing something very similar to that at the University of Vermont, but they would just, really, invite people out and their parents for, guardians for, for coffee and just kind of, be a face of the institution. And I think, my overarching philosophy to all this is people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And if you can provide people who will provide that warmth and do some outreach in the backyards of the students, that can be an effective strategy as well.
Yeah, that's a great point, Ryan, and we totally agree. In fact, we do have several partners who will utilize the Conduit platform to help train those alumni as ambassadors in some of those other geo markets as well. So that's a great point that you make. I have the thank you slide up. Thank you everyone for attending today. We did have one last question about how long it takes to set up a Conduit platform and who does it. Definitely encourage you guys to reach out to us. I have Gil's contact information up here, grogers@platformq.com. Happy to talk to you about any of that. And any current partners or new partners who come on, we do want to provide all of you with one free webcast specifically tailored to reach these access populations. So happy to talk to all of you about that. We'll go ahead and wrap up for today, but thank you all so much for joining us. And Matt and Ryan, thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.